The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to this morning's role play session with your host, James McDonald.
Well, thank you, Andrea. And I'd like to start by welcoming our participants to our role play session here today. It is my great privilege to be hosting our role play session, and of course, we're going to take as many of your role play volunteers as time permits, and we can also take any of your questions that revolve around the issue of lead follow-up. So here's what I want to begin, though. A couple little things, little housekeeping notes before we get started. First of all, we're doing our super conference up in San Francisco starting tomorrow. We're super excited about that. I know that there are some of you that are registered for the Platinum event that's going on at the same time for Outside Sales Agent. It's the OSA conference that's happening at the same time. So I know that there are a lot of you that are registered, so we'll look forward to seeing you up there. And then, of course, for those of you on the West Coast, coming up on the 19th of November is our Huntington Beach Coaching Members Only Boot Camp. And the East Coast, Craig already did one in Toronto. I know we'll do another one in Florida. But the one in Huntington Beach, the boot camp, is on the 19th. So that is, it's about a week and a half away. So we're really excited about that. And what is it, a week away, Andrea? Yeah, today is
it's 12th, so
12th. It's
just a few.
1 week today.
Yes.
Yeah, 1 week today. So I know that most of you have confirmed your attendance, but there's still some of you that have not. So please do that. Confirm that you'll be there just so we can be really well prepared. That would be wonderful. It's a really great day we spend with you. It's a chance to really go in depth on the lead generation, lead conversion, the unique selling propositions, and most importantly, setting up these various systems in your business. And we'll spend a lot of time really detailing this. Plus, we're going to do some panels, which is always a great way to learn from each other. But it's a fantastic day, and we get nothing but amazing feedback every time we do a boot camp. So make sure you do participate, and we'll look forward to seeing you. Okay, now, I want to begin our session here this morning just really quickly. I want to demonstrate the script that we use when we're following up with a prospect who isn't ready to book an appointment with immediately. So, you know, we always practice booking the appointment because obviously that's what we want to practice. We want to practice making the offer to meet with the prospect, whether that's making the CMA offer, all right, to book the appointment, to see their home, to offer an accurate evaluation, helpful tips, net sheet. Or we make the buyer offer. Would you like me to email you properties every day that come on the market that match exactly what you're looking for from all the various real estate companies? I'll include great deals, hard to find properties, etc. Those are the offers that we practice the most because booking the appointment is the name of the game. If we have a worthy prospect, if we've asked our qualifying questions and the answers to those questions have shown us that clearly there's worthiness in this prospect. There's motivation, their timing is there, and it clearly would be appropriate to book an appointment with them. Then we want to be really good at making the offer to meet. But what we also need to practice is what happens far more often than that. Far more often, what happens is we speak with a prospect and we determine that they are considering a move, but their timing is not today. So they're a good prospect, but their timing isn't right now. Now, I just want to point out a couple of things here. Those prospects will make up the bulk of your business. By far, they'll make up the bulk of your business, but only if you do a really good job of putting in place the follow-up system. Here's the first thing that you need to consider. If you're speaking with a prospect who's motivated, but their timing is far off in the distance, maybe it's 6 months away or a year away or possibly more than a year away, but clearly there's a reason why they're considering their move. So there is motivation there. What you've got to understand is that it's highly likely that you're the only realtor in the marketplace that knows that they're going to be making a move in 6 months, 12 months, or whenever. You're the only one. So of the thousands of realtors perhaps in your marketplace, there is one realtor that knows that Mr. and Mrs. Smith are going to be selling their home in 8 months or whenever. Okay, that is a tremendous advantage. But the only way that it's an advantage is if in that 8 months, let's call it, we establish ourselves as their realtor. So we've got to be really good at making that offer in the universal callback script to follow up with them, to begin to start establishing ourselves as the provider of information. And in establishing ourselves as the provider of information, what we're also doing is we're slowly establishing ourselves as their realtor, so that when it comes time for them to list their home for sale or buy a home or both, they do not have to go through the discomfort of looking for a realtor that that they want to work with, that you've already done that. Something that Craig likes to say is, do people want the job of finding a realtor to be a difficult, agonizing decision, or would they prefer it to be an easy, obvious decision? And the answer, of course, is clear. People would much rather it be easy and obvious as to who it is that they're going to work with. So if we're attracting prospects, or we're identifying prospects who are early in the process, we have a tremendous advantage because we get to start to establish ourselves as their realtor by being the provider of information. So here's how we want to make this offer. The first thing that we want to do is we want to offer them information. Every prospect that we're following up with has asked for information. So we know universally the prospect that we're speaking to wants information. They asked for it. That's the only reason that we call them at all. So what we're going to offer them is our monthly newsletter. But we're going to make it sound really good. We're going to make it sound like it has more information that's even better than what they had initially requested. So we can say, Mrs. Smith, would you like me to send you my free monthly newsletter? It's full of great market information, statistical data on what's happening with home prices, but it's also got some great tips that'll help you prepare for your eventual move. It's absolutely free. Of course, there's no obligation. Would you like me to go ahead and send that to you every month, Mrs. Smith? Okay, now, I've made it sound really, really good. That's what you're supposed to do. Yes, we're going to provide really helpful information. Okay, now, Mrs. Smith, undoubtedly, because I've already determined that there's motivation there, Mrs. Smith, not surprisingly, says, yes, sure, thank you. You can send that. Remember, benefit first, then commitment. So Mrs. Smith says, yes, that would be great. Then I get to say, Mrs. Smith, when would be a good time to follow up with you when you're closer to making your move? I'm not going to suggest, I'm not going to say, Mrs. Smith, would it be okay if I followed up with you in 6 months? Because 6 months might be wrong. In 6 months, they may have already been moved, right? So Craig designed the script to put the onus on the prospect to give the timing to you. So we offer the benefit first. I've got this great newsletter I put together every month. It's full of market statistics, information on what's happening with fluctuations in home prices. It's got information on different neighborhoods in the marketplace. Plus, it's full of helpful tips to prepare you for your eventual move. And it's free. There's no obligation. I'd be more than happy to send that to you every month if you'd like. Yes, that would be great. Thank you. By the way, when would be a good time for me to follow up with you when you might be a little closer to making your move? And you shut up. And what we're going to discover is that what the prospect suggests is always surprising. Usually it's surprising because it's sooner than you would have expected them to say. Once in a while it's surprising because it's far, far away from what you thought they would say. But the bottom line is this: we're bad at guessing. We're bad at guessing. So if we're thinking, I will follow up with them in 4 months, and all of a sudden they say, call me next month, well, if you had waited 4 months, you'd have been way too late. So we always want the prospect to tell us when would be a good time. And what we're going to do is we're going to err on the side of caution. So when Mrs. Smith says, well, we're definitely not going to be doing anything until the new year, so why don't you give us a call sometime, at the end of January, certainly well after Christmas. Okay, so now we say, all right, I don't want to call back too late, but I also don't want to call back too early, so we're going to err on the side of caution. And maybe the second week of January or the first week of January, we'll give them a call. And you go into your contact management system and you set up a callback for that time. Now, when you call back, we know that we've sent the information. So we're able to call back and say, hi, Mrs. Smith, it's James calling with Remax Omega Realty in Craig Proctor's office. The reason I'm calling is I spoke with you several months ago about a possible move that you indicated, and I've been sending you my free monthly newsletter, just calling to see if your moving plans have changed or if you're still thinking about making a move in the next few months here. And now I'm in the script. All we're doing is we're referencing our previous conversation. We're referencing what they said that they were planning on doing, but we're still making it very easy. We're not suggesting you're ready to list your home today. We're letting them tell us, are you still thinking about putting your home on the market in the next 3 to 6 months? Are you still thinking about making a move to Sarasota in the next 3 to 6 months? But we're right back in the script. All we're doing is we're referencing that relationship. Now, at the end of the universal script, if we determine that still the prospect is down the road, they're not ready to do anything right yet, same offer. Would you like me to continue to send me my free monthly newsletter? As you know, it's got great information. But what I can also do is send you a snapshot of some homes that have sold in your neighborhood. Would you find that helpful? It's free. There's no obligation. Again, we're establishing ourselves as the provider of information. When would be a good time for me to follow up with you when you might be more ready to make your move, Mrs. Smith? Take that time and cut it in half, or at least reasonably backdate it so you're not too late. And that's the process that we're going to use. Now, I have to tell you, the overwhelming majority of the transactions that Craig and our team did every year, those transactions came from prospects that weren't booked immediately, but were followed up with over time. Overwhelmingly, they probably accounted for 80% of the business. And we're talking about 500 transactions a year over and over and over again for an over 10-year span. So we're talking about a lot of business here. Here's what I notice with our students, especially in the beginning, is their focus is far more on the now prospects, the ones that we can book an appointment with right now, the buyers who are looking, who are actively looking, where we can book an appointment, the sellers who are looking to get something on their home on the market now. And they don't do a particularly good job of the majority of the prospects that, although they are going to be moving, it's down the road. It represents the bulk of the business in the leads that you're generating. But your focus in the beginning tends to be on the now. Here's what we find. As you begin to progress with Craig Proctor's system, what happens is you start to put in place the follow-up system, and more and more and more and more of your business comes from the longer-term follow-up with your prospects. So out of 10 leads, instead of only working with one because they're looking to do something in the next 90 days, instead now of those 10, you're doing business with 5 of them, because 4 of those 5 are long-term, but you've got a system in place to effectively follow up and converse with those 4 out of 5 that are super motivated, but their timing is down the road. So you've increased your business by 400%, 500%, without generating any more leads. The reason your business has more than quadrupled is because of the long-term follow-up system. So we need to practice that, and we need to be really good at that as well. The objective of the universal callback script is not to book an appointment. It is not. The objective of the universal callback script is to discover the timing and motivation of the prospect. It's not to make them motivated. It's not to trick them into meeting with us. It's not to book an appointment with them. It's none of those things. It's certainly not to get a listing. It's not to set yourself apart from your competitors. That's not the purpose of the universal script. Its purpose is to determine the moving plans of the prospect you're speaking to. That is a successful follow-up call. If you've determined the moving plans of your prospect, then that is the purpose. Now, if their moving plans are such that you would need to meet with them immediately in order to help them, then you make them the offer to meet. But in most instances, that's not the case. So we've got to be really, really good at making an effective offer that would cause them to say, yes, it would be great if you followed up with me in a month and a half. Okay. I hope that was helpful, because this really applies to, well, it does apply to absolutely everybody. on our webinar here today. So having said that, let's get started. And Andrea, we can take any questions or we can take volunteers who want to do role playing. You know the drill. So Andrea, let's crank it up and get started.
Okay, and if you haven't done so already, go ahead and click the hand icon to role play or type in the chat box any questions or comments you may have. And Julio wants to know where he gets the script that you were just referring to.
Okay, well, if you scroll down a little bit here, Andrea, just because on mine it's blocked, the Market Watch newsletter offer is kind of blocked here. But here's the gist of it. Would you like to receive my free monthly newsletter to keep you in touch with what's happening in the marketplace? Okay, so the prospect says yes. All we're then asking is when would be a good time for me to follow up with you when you might be a little closer to making your move. What I'm suggesting is this. The reason that we do these role play calls every week, the reason you're in the coaching program, the reason you've invested a lot of money and time into this system is to master it. All right, so here's what mastery means. We understand so well what we're doing that we can be really, really good at it. So instead of simply saying, would you like to receive my free monthly newsletter to keep you in touch with what's happening in the marketplace? If you really understand what you're offering here, could you embellish that? What do you mean keep me in touch with what's happening in the marketplace? Well, I mean, like, I can include market data on home sales, on home price fluctuations, on volume of homes sold, on list to sales price ratios in the marketplace. Like, you're a master at communicating with prospects now, or at least that's the goal. So I don't just need to say, I've got great information for you. I can actually articulate what great information. So the prospect is listening to this saying, well, I'd really like that. That would be really helpful for me to know what's going on in the neighborhood, in my town, in the area with what's happening with home sales. That would be helpful for me. So yes, in the beginning, read the words on the page. But the reason that we're doing this is so that you can be even better than that. We can internalize this and master this script so well that we can be really effective. Now, the honest truth is, I don't know why we don't include the call to action after we make the offer of receiving the monthly newsletter. It should say that there. When would be a good time to call? When would be a good time for me to follow up with you? That line should be included under the Market Watch newsletter, but you can just write that in yourself, all right? So when the prospect says, yes, I'd like to receive your monthly newsletter, we don't just say, okay, bye. Right? We always want to recommend a course of action. So would it be okay if I followed up with you when you might be a little closer to making your move? Prospect says, sure. When would that be? Or here's a better way of asking the question. When would be a good time for me to follow up with you when you're a little closer to making your move? And you shut up and let them tell you. So add that line to the bottom of your script. When would be a good time for me to follow up with you a little closer to making your move? All right. Okay, good question. Andrea, next.
Our first volunteer today is Mario Daniel Sconza. Your mic is now open.
Hello, Mario. Hey, Mario, how you doing?
How are you?
I'm
Very
good.
well. How are you today?
Mario, you got to pick up the phone or microphone or something because I can't really hear you.
How about now? Is that better?
Yeah, it's a little bit better. It'll work.
Excellent. So let's, if you don't mind, role play a 27 valuable seller tips that you've requested. Before I get into that, I want to ask you one question. Using all the tactics and times, you know, calling at different times, trying to reach a lead, at what point should I kibosh the lead so that the unreachable lead is not hiding the potential good lead?
Well, that's what I'm saying is when following up with an old lead stops you from following up with a new lead, that's when it's time to let it go. Okay? So in other words, okay, let's say that you had an hour to sit down and make follow-up calls. And in that hour, you spent your whole hour chasing prospects that you've never been able to get a hold of from weeks ago. But in that same hour, you also had leads that came in the last 24 hours, but you never got to them. because you were too busy chasing around prospects that you hadn't been able to reach from weeks ago. Do you see how that wouldn't make sense?
Totally and completely.
Okay, so here's the rule. You always follow up with the newest leads first. Before you pick up the phone, you say, are there any leads that I can follow up with that have come in earlier than this lead that I'm about to phone? And if the answer is yes, that's who you should be calling.
Okay, forgive me, I said one question, but here's another one. Am I kiboshing that lead, the unreachable lead, completely, or am I putting them in a follow-up system, say for down the road, a month from now, or whatever the case is?
No. You're not going to schedule a follow-up, but you are going to leave them in your database. Okay, so that way, if that prospect requests information or they respond to an ad 2 months from now, it would be nice for you to look in your database and see, this is somebody that I chased around for 7 phone calls. Right? It'd be helpful to have that information. But no, you're not. Here's the deal. You're not going to schedule another call, because if you can't get to them now, then think about it. 2 months from now, you're going to have 200 leads that have come since then that take priority over following up with that prospect. So how are you going to get to it? If the rule is you always follow up with the newest leads first, then in a month, oh my God, you're going to have hundreds of leads perhaps. So you'd never get to them. Now that's different than if you talk to them and you scheduled a call to speak with the prospect. Here's what I'd recommend for everybody, okay? This is a good way of doing it. Your day timer on your contact management system, they all look like this, okay? One side of your day timer has what we call timeless activity. In other words, these are prospects that you can follow up with at any time that you can, right? There is no scheduled time when you're going to call them, right? These are the leads that you've generated and you're following up with them. So they go on your day timer under timeless activity. You can follow up with them anytime. Okay, now, on the other side of your day timer, where we have all of the hours of the day, we're going to put in there the prospects that we actually spoke with that we're now following up with. So if I talk to Mario and Mario says, well, call me at the end of January, and I schedule a call for the first week of January, then I go onto my day timer and I go to January 5th, let's say, and January 5th, I know that I make follow-up calls at 6 p.m. So at 6 p.m., I put in Mario's contact because that's a timed activity. Mario is scheduled there very specifically because I spoke with Mario. So I'm not going to take Mario and put him under timeless activity. I'm going to put him in under a scheduled activity. That denotes to me I've spoken with Mario before. So now when I look at my day timer and I'm like, at 6 o'clock, I'm going to sit down for 2 hours and make follow-up calls. Who am I going to call first? Well, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to call the prospects that I've scheduled to call. In other words, the ones that I've already spoken with and I'm following up with. Then I'm going to call the newest leads, the latest leads that have come in. Then I'm going to call back the prospects that I haven't been able to reach who maybe came in 2 days, 3 days, a week before. That is the order, all right, the priority order of how we're going to follow up with our prospects. Does that make sense, Mario?
Totally, James. Thank you very much. That's great information. May I do a role play?
All right, ring, ring. Hello?
Well, thank you, James. Is this James?
Yeah, it is. Who's this?
Thank you very much, James. It's Mario Sconza over at Remax, and the reason I'm calling is because I received your request for the 27 valuable seller tips you wanted, and I wanted to let you know that we popped that over to you in the email. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Great. Are you folks planning on making the move in the next 3 to 6 months?
Well, we're thinking about it.
Okay, and if you were to move, would you be staying in the area or moving out of the area?
Well, we'd probably move a little further up north.
And when do you think that might be?
definitely not until probably the spring market. Probably, probably, April we'll start getting serious about it.
Around April, okay. And do you have a realtor to help you, James, when the time is right?
No, we haven't talked to any realtors. We're not that far in the process yet.
I understand. And now, would you consider an offer on your home within the next 30 to 90 days with a closing date in the springtime, or are you absolutely committed to starting the process in the springtime?
Yeah, we're not doing anything until then. That's for sure. Yeah, I just saw your report there, and it looked interesting because it is something that we're planning on doing next year. But yeah, no, we're not ready yet. We're not going to be ready for a few months now.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm glad you found it helpful. Would it be okay, would you like to receive my free monthly newsletter to keep you in touch with what's happening in the marketplace? We try to provide great information on market conditions and current market conditions, as well as provide different tidbits of information to help you increase the value of your home. So when you are ready, we can hopefully get it sold for the most amount of money with the least amount of aggravation for you and your family. Would that be okay? Would you like to receive that newsletter?
How much does it cost?
Pardon me, it's a free monthly newsletter. We absorb all the costs, James. It's free to you. Would you like me to send that to you?
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Oh, and you're most welcome. Would it be okay if I followed up with you at a later time?
Sure.
And when do you think would be a good time for me to call you back, James?
Well, I guess next April.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I appreciate your acceptance of the call.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, so Mario, do you see how the question at the end could have been asked a little differently? So here's the way you want to ask the question. You don't want to say, would it be okay if I followed up with you? You want to say this: when would be a good time for me to follow up with you when you might be a little closer to making your move? Okay. Just in one fell swoop. When would be a good time for me to follow up with you when you might be a little closer to making your move? You're asking that after you've offered the newsletter. Okay, and you can streamline that offer a little bit too, but I did like the way that you embellished your newsletter. You forgot to tell me that it's free and that there's no obligation, which is an absolute cardinal sin. I won't say to you, is there any cost to it? I'll just say no. That's the deal. The prospect isn't going to say to you, well, is there a cost? They're just going to say no. Want to know why? Because they assume that there's a cost and they assume there's an obligation. You've got to say to them, there is no cost and there is no obligation to this. If you don't say it, they will assume it and they'll just say no. And you won't understand why. So we have to say, every month I put together a free monthly newsletter. There's no obligation to it, but it'll keep you in touch with what's happening with home prices in the marketplace and in your neighborhood, fluctuations and volume of homes selling. But also it's full of really great tips to share with you what to do and what not to do when you're preparing your home for sale so we can maximize the value of your home when the time is right. Would you like to receive that free monthly newsletter, Mario? Well, of course you're going to say yes. As soon as you say yes, that'd be great. Then I say, when would be a good time for me to follow up with you when you might be a little closer to making your move? Okay, so that was pretty good. And I have to tell you, if you are generating leads from the 27 tips, you're going to find that 80% of the prospects are going to be down the road.
Yes, we're definitely finding that, and we're finding that the old cliche, the fortune is in the follow-up, James. And I want to ask you here is, how you sort of shifted the wording on the on question 6, the wording is a wee bit different than how you just placed it after the Market Watch newsletter offer. So should we use the wording that you just suggested at question 6, or should we keep question 6 if it's
okay, so here's what I'm suggesting is what you want to do is offer the Market Watch newsletter first and then ask question 6.
Yes.
Because in other words, okay, have you ever heard Craig say this? Benefit first, then commitment. So do you agree that the benefit to the prospect would be to receive your monthly newsletter? Okay, so we're going to make that offer first. So it is a little confusing, but of course, question 6 is a question. I would like to see question 6 put underneath the Market Watch newsletter offer. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand you wholeheartedly. I didn't phrase the question properly. What about if we're not offering the newsletter because they're a now appointment? Sorry, that doesn't. Oh.
Well, that's why I would say put question 6 underneath Market Watch newsletter.
Read you loud and clear.
That
Sorry.
way, if you're not going to offer them the Market Watch newsletter, you're not going to ask question 6. You're going to go right to the buyer or seller offer.
Pardon me. You're at. I didn't catch that, but now I read you loud and clear.
Okay. So that's an easy way of doing it. All right. So, yeah. I mean, obviously, all of the questions are listed in the second portion, but really, question 6 should be underneath the Market Watch newsletter offer. That's really where that should go.
Understood clearly. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Great questions, Mariel. All right, who's next, Andrea?
Our next guest is Adele Langdon. Your line is now open. You're muted on your end. Just hit the red mic button. Okay, we'll have to come back to you, Adele. We'll go on to Dorothy Bradford. Your mic is now open. Dorothy? Okay, we'll move on. I'm going to go ahead and ask a couple of the chat questions. Mark says, please address the necessary time blocking discipline I need to follow for consistent follow-up. For example, the best time of day for follow-up calls and how much time per day should I dedicate to this discipline?
Okay, well, obviously the time that you dedicate is going to have to do with a couple things. Number one, it's going to have to do with how many leads you generate. So the more leads you generate, the more time you're going to have to spend in lead follow-up. But also, I have to tell you, the better you are with lead follow-up, the less time you'll spend doing it. Two reasons. Number one is you can get on and off the phone much more quickly when you're good with the universal script. You're not speaking to a prospect for 20 minutes. You're speaking to them for, like 3 to 5 minutes at the most. Okay, so that way, in an hour, you can get through a lot of prospects. You can speak to 20 prospects. That's pretty damn good. Whereas I know that there are a lot of our students, especially when they're new, where in an hour they look back and they're like, "Oh my God, I talked to 3 people." That's a problem. That means you could spend all day and never get to the leads that you generated the day before. So being good with the universal script means that you're really proficient and you get through the calls more quickly. Here's what it also means. When somebody clearly suggests motivation, all right, and timing, we don't follow up with that prospect or offer to follow up with them later on down the road. We immediately book an appointment to meet them now. And I know that particularly when someone's new, or if they don't have a lot of D in their personality, what they will do is they will comfort themselves by not trying to book an appointment, but by instead offering to follow up later. And there are a lot of salespeople that do that. In other words, when a prospect is motivated now, the time to book the appointment is now. But if it makes us feel uncomfortable doing that, and we think, oh, I know they're just going to say no, or they don't know me well enough, or they're not going to do it, what we do is we go to our fallback position. And we say to them, well, I've got some great information to send you. Would you like to receive that? And would it be okay if I followed up with you? And the prospect says, sure, you can follow up with me. And we go, oh, thank God. All right, I'll follow up with them. And really what we want to be doing is we want to identify, if we follow up with a prospect and they clearly indicate timing and motivation now, we need to book the appointment immediately, right now. We don't want to be following up with every prospect 10 times if it's unnecessary, because it's extremely time-consuming to do that. Okay, so that's one thing I need to say. Your proficiency with the universal script will save you hours and hours of time following up. Not just because your conversations are shorter, but because you're following up with each prospect fewer times, the better you get at the universal script. Okay, now as far as times to call, here's what you're finding. The overwhelming majority of prospects, when they include their phone number, they're giving you their cell phone. So it isn't unlikely that we can reach a prospect at 10 o'clock in the morning or at 9 o'clock at night. Okay, we can reach the prospect. Their cell phone is in there, okay, like you and I. But here's the difference is we want to have a conversation with our prospect about real estate. So if I'm at the office and my phone rings and I answer it, I'm probably not in a position where I can really have a conversation with you about my real estate plans. Maybe I can, and maybe some people can, but certainly not everybody. So that's why what Craig always found is that when we make our calls in the evenings, you know, at 7 o'clock, we find that the overwhelming majority of the prospects that answer the phone aren't working. And if they're not working, it means they can spend 5 minutes on the phone taking a courtesy call. And remember, that's how we're framing this. It's a courtesy call. They requested information from us. But here's what what I also want to point out is that this is why it's so important that you follow up with the prospect when you can, as soon as the prospect made the request for information. If the prospect is sitting at their computer and they responded to your ad, then we know that at that moment they're thinking about real estate, and clearly they're not working. What they're doing at that moment is they're looking at real estate ads or looking at real estate or responding to something that they've received. But we know that their brain is consumed by real estate. So if you are in a position where you can follow up with that prospect in the next few minutes, you know, it's highly likely that you're going to be on the phone and speaking with a prospect that's in real estate mode. They're thinking about real estate. And that's a really good prospect to talk to and a really good time to talk to them. So bear that in mind. But, you know, we really, the bottom line is the benefit of generating the leads this way is that you get to follow up with them at your convenience. All right. Remember this. You're going to send the prospect what they requested. And they can request the information 24/7 through your website, through your hotline, 24/7 they can request information. We're going to send them the information as immediately as we possibly can. And at our convenience, we're going to follow up with those prospects. Would it be best to follow up with them as quickly as possible? Yes. Can we always do that? Of course not. But you will find that you'll get better results when you do. Great question. All right, who's next, Andrea?
Christy has typed in, can the follow-up script be revised a bit to include the revisions James mentioned today and maybe to include some of his embellishments?
Well, why don't you do it yourself? We're not changing the universal callback script because it's universal. I guess here's what I mean. This script that you're looking at right here has been exactly this way for many, many, many years. And that's because it's universal. So this is almost like a product of our pride in that we have a universal callback script that works. And this is the identical universal callback script that we've been using for well over a decade, if not longer. Well, over a decade, let's say. And it hasn't changed at all. And we don't want to change it. We don't want to say, well, every year we amend the universal script. No, we don't want to say that. However, realistically, the objective of the universal script is for you to master it in such a way that you don't need to read the words on the page because you understand what the universal script is doing and what it's saying. When you get to that point, it becomes your own. And all you're doing is you're having a conversation with your prospect, just like an attorney would have a conversation with a new client. That's what you're doing. But it's very structured in what you're doing and what you're saying. So here's my recommendation. I would add in yourself whatever you like, whatever you find comfortable, and most importantly, whatever is effective for you, write it in yourself. But yeah, we're not going to edit the universal script. If you look, though, on the website, we have made some little edits and changes. For example, we've got a section called Common Objections with the universal script, where they essentially embellish some of the offers or the questions that we're asking, but we don't want to change it in the script itself. All right, so I hope that helps.
Thank you. We're going to go on to a role play now. We have Brian. Your line is now open.
Hello. Hi, James.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Excellent. What are we doing today?
All right. Role play for sellers on the postcard that I sent for find out what home sales in the area are for.
Okay.
All right.
Ring, ring. Hello?
Hi. Is James there?
Yeah, this is James.
Hi, James. This is Brian from Remax, and the reason I'm calling you because I received your request for the information you wanted for the area sale, and I'm about to mail that to you. Is that okay, James?
Yeah, thank you.
Are you folks planning on making a move in the next 3 to 6 months?
We're thinking about doing it next year.
Okay. And if you were to move, would you be staying in the area or moving out of the area?
Something smaller.
Something smaller. Okay, you're downsizing basically.
Yeah.
And when do you think that might be, James?
Well, my kid, my youngest daughter finishes school in June, so we wouldn't do anything till after that.
All right. And when the time is right, do you have a realtor to help you with?
Well, we do have. I mean, the realtor that sold us this home. Once in a while we get something in the mail from them. But I mean, I don't know whether or not we would use them to sell this house necessarily. We'd probably give them a call though.
All right. James, would you like to receive my free monthly newsletter to keep you in touch with what's happening in the marketplace?
Well, I'll just look at the information that you sent me.
All right. It's a free market. It's a few.
It's
a few market information.
I didn't know it was free because he didn't say it, so I didn't know it was free.
Well, it's free and it's full of tips and ideas on how to make your house ready to sell for more dollars and stuff like that. And like I said, it's free and it will obligate you to nothing. Is that okay, James?
Yeah, no, that'd be great. The more information, the better.
So I will put you on that. And James, when do you think would be a good time for me to get in touch with you again in the future?
Well, as I said, we're really not going to be selling our home or doing anything like that until certainly at the end of the school year. So maybe in the springtime you can reach out.
Okay, in the springtime. Okay, James. Thanks very much, and have a great day.
Okay, you too. Okay, so here's what I would like you to have done. Sometimes the root of discovering the seller's motivation is by exploring their buyer side. So I said to you, we're going to be downsizing. You said, do you have a realtor to help you when the time is right? I just think that maybe there's another question that you could have asked about that. Like, what if you said this? Have you started looking around for a smaller property that might be suitable for you? Here's what you want to figure out. If I'm not going to be selling my home until, after the school year ends, because I don't want to disrupt my kids' school, okay, does that mean that I'm not actively looking at properties now? Even if I'm not going to make an offer to buy one, what if I told you this? Every weekend my wife and I go look at open houses and, we like to look at what's coming on the internet, coming on the market for sale. Just to, we're curious to see what's out there. Okay, here's where your brain should tell you. It is inevitable that if I'm doing that, I am going to meet a whole bunch of realtors. And some of those realtors are going to offer to show me properties, and they're going to establish relationships with me. Now, you're going to call me back in March or something. But when you call me back in March, if I've already established a relationship with another realtor, I'm not saying it's impossible for you, but you've just made it really difficult for you to pull me away from my realtor that's been showing me properties, you know, sending me different properties and stuff like that. So the reason we ask the question is, are you planning on staying in the area? All right. The reason that we ask that question is we want to find out if this is also a buyer prospect. And when we do, the question that you have to ask that you didn't is this: would you prefer to look for your next home before you put your present home up for sale? So we could have it that we could say that in a very conversational way. Could say, hey, James, you know, you're not planning on selling your home until after the school year, but are you looking around for suitable properties that you might be interested in buying? Are you looking around? And if I say no, well, that's good. But if I say, well, yeah, you know, I am. I look on the internet. Well, you could offer me a better way to look around for properties, right? So make sure you ask the questions. Make sure you're really exploring the prospect's moving motivation and timing. Now,
okay.
when you made the offer, that was really good. But again, I pointed this out. You got to tell me that it's free. If you don't tell me it's free, if you don't tell me there's no obligation, I'm just going to say no. You're a salesperson, and I'm the consumer. Consumers know that salespeople sell. So if you offer me something and you do not tell me it's free, I'm going to assume it isn't. So make sure you do that. Okay, it's a little detail, but I'm telling you, it makes a difference.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, really good job.
Thank
I hope you found that helpful.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. All right, who's next, Andrea?
We have a lot of questions, so I'm going to move on to some of those. One from Donald, he says, I've been generating leads for distressed properties that are submitted by relatives on behalf of the prospect. I have the lead. I have them make the appointment after qualifying their understanding of the prospect's timing and motivation. There is no contract info for the actual prospect. The requester of the info does not want to provide the contact, but assures me the prospect will be in attendance. Any suggestions on how I can speak with the actual person?
Well, first of all, we talk about this a lot, but you've got to establish the exception versus the rule. This is why what Craig he likes to talk about specifically or particularly when it's a sign call is he always asks, are you calling about yourself? Because here's the truth is, if somebody's calling for someone else or they're hiding behind that they're calling for someone else, it's a show of lack of motivation. All right, so again, you said this is happening, but I would bet you that this is the exception to the rule. Out of 100 prospects, this might happen a handful of times or less. So it's not really a big deal. All you can do is you can say, when you discover that they're calling for somebody else, you can say, well, I would be better able to help them if I could speak with them directly. Can I reach out to them and get their contact information from you? Where it is inevitably they'll say no, and then you can say, great, let me give you my contact information and perhaps you could pass it along to them. Would that be okay? Like, just get on and off the phone. But if you offer to help the person that they're calling on behalf of and they say no, well, then no. Move on. But again, this is not happening a lot. This is, we generate the same leads that you do as everybody else does. We know how often this happens, and it is the exception, not the rule. So all we can do is when the exception comes up, we say, I'd really like to reach out and help your brother or nephew or whoever. If I can get their contact information, I can offer them information more directly. Would it be okay if I got that from you? No? Okay, well, can I share with you my contact information so that you can provide that to them and perhaps they can reach out to me? Would that be okay? Give them the information, get off the phone. But here's what you're not going to do. You're not going to try to convert someone else through a third party. It's impossible. And it's a waste of time. And that's why Craig says in his 25 years selling real estate, he never converted a prospect that was looking for someone else. That should tell you, that should speak volumes. Next question, Andrea.
Our next question and sort of a comment, we have two members who spend a lengthy time amount on the phone. One of our members spent 52 minutes on the phone. She still made the appointment, but that's an awfully long time. And another said she feels like she's being drawn into discussions about what the prospect wants as opposed to being able to defer the discussion into a meeting. Do you have any suggestions on this?
You see, what you're doing is you're killing the appointment, because the purpose of the appointment is to sit down with them and understand their moving plans. The purpose of the appointment is so that if I have a great understanding of what you're looking for, then I can make sure that I'm only sending you properties that match exactly what you and your family are looking for. That's the purpose of the appointment. It is not the purpose of the phone call. So as soon as the prospect starts talking about what they're looking for, what you've got to do is you've got to be able to interject and say, hey, you know what, Mrs. Smith? If I understand perfectly and thoroughly exactly what it is you're looking for and what is important and not important to you in a property, I can send you only those properties that match your criteria, especially the hard to find and great deals. When would be a good time for us to sit down together for 15 minutes so I can take down exactly what you're looking for? I'm flexible, days, evenings. We can do it later today if you're available. There's no cost to it. There's no obligation for you to buy anything. When would be a good time, Mrs. Smith? That's how you do it, right? If you're having 52-minute conversations, first of all, thank God it did result in an appointment, I suppose. But honestly, whatever it was that you were discussing in that 52 minutes, that should have been discussed at the appointment. That's the purpose of the appointment, to get them face to face, to discuss their moving plans and what they're looking for. Okay, so yeah, and I'm telling you, this is not abnormal. You are absolutely where many others are as well. In the beginning, you're having longer and longer conversations. The better you get, the shorter the conversations will be. You'll see that.
And it's speaking of that, last week I believe Craig did a really great example role play of this with, I think it was Lynn Goodell, and certain personalities will tend to chit chat more than others. So I suggest going back, and I do believe it was last week, and re-listening to that role play session, because he was really able to get her to continue on with the script.
It wouldn't have been last week. It would have been the week before.
The week before, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's the bottom line, okay? I bet you're a high I, and I bet you the prospect was a high I as well. And that is recipe for a long conversation. You've got to, when you're making these follow-up calls, what you really have to do is dial up your D. All right, we call that dial up your D. Everybody has D in their personality. Everybody does. Some have a lot more than others, that's all. But everybody does have some D in their personality. When you're making these follow-up calls, you really got to dial up your D. The high I personality in you is the personality type that really wants to talk, wants to converse, wants to be liked, wants to be friendly, and unfortunately, that's the personality type that's causing a 52-minute conversation. The high D in your personality is the one that wants to be more to the point. All right, and that is the valuable personality type. You get to the point. The high I is going to make sure that you're very polite and that you're very helpful. And that you're very likable, but the high D is what allows you to be able to interject and be able to say to the prospect, if we can get together for 15 minutes, I can discuss exactly what you're looking for in depth so that we don't make a mistake in sending you the wrong properties, and we send you the very best properties the second they come on the market. It's free. There's no obligation. I'm flexible. When can we discuss this in more detail? What would you prefer, days, evenings, or weekends? That's the high D that says that. The high I doesn't say that. The high I says, oh, you're looking for something in the Delphi area? Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, that's a beautiful area. As a matter of fact, I've got some friends that live there, and they belong to the country club. Have you seen it? That's the high I. And we need to dial the high I back and dial the high D up. And that's what causes a 52-minute conversation to be a 5-minute conversation and result in the appointment the same way the 52-minute conversation did. Good question, Andrea.
Okay. Next, we're going to go Adele again. Adele Langdon. You're muted on your end still. Wait just a second, see if you can find that unmute. There you go, Adele. Say hello.
Hello, Adele. I love your new song.
Okay, we're going to have to move on. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, let's take one more question for today, Andrea.
Oh, I didn't realize it was the top of the hour already. You're right.
It is the top of the hour, and let's take another question, and then we'll sign off for today. And for again, just one last time, for those of you that are coming up to San Francisco, say hi. I will be. I'm leaving there now. But for those of you that aren't, but are going to be at the boot camp, it's a week today, on the 19th. So really looking forward to seeing you there, and we're going to have a phenomenal day, as you'll see. What is our last question, Andrea, or role play or whatever?
Okay, so this is from John. Do you explain the home hunter service or CMA offer even if they are a long way down the road? Not to book an appointment, but to explain the benefits.
No. There is no point, because here's the thing. If you explain the CMA offer and they say, hey, that sounds great, yeah, I'll have that, you're going to book an appointment with somebody that isn't going to be selling their home for 6 months. That's called a waste of your time. Now, if you're new and you don't have very many appointments, then you know what? It's not the end of the world to you. But to Craig, it became a real problem. See, here's what I discovered. Okay, I could book appointments with sellers very easily because the seller offer is very good. So when I have a homeowner that's remotely considering selling, even if they're not selling till, let's use the example of the end of the school year, I could articulate to that homeowner, hey, look, I know you're not planning on selling until later on in the new year, but if Craig can come and take a look at your property, he can be very accurate in determining the likely sales price and point out helpful tips, things to do and not do to make your home worth more money while you're preparing it for sale. Also, we can go over a net sheet so you'll know exactly what you'll have left in your pocket once all the various closing costs are incurred. It's free. You're not obligated to put your home on the market or anything like that. We're flexible. When would be a good time? Prospect says, well, damn, that sounds really good. That would be really helpful to me. So they say, how about Friday evening? So we book an appointment for 8 p.m. on Friday evening, and Craig's like, okay, so he's got this appointment at 8 p.m. on Friday evening. He goes there, and he thinks, well, obviously there must be motivation there to list their home, only to discover they're absolutely not doing anything for 6 months. Was that a good use of Craig's time? Now, the answer, of course, is no. This only has to happen so many times before Craig comes back and says, the purpose of this call is not to book an appointment, it's because you can. The purpose of this phone call is to determine the ones that are going to be doing something and booking an appointment with them. That's the purpose of the appointment. Okay, so when you're new, in the beginning, if you don't have a lot of appointments, then, it isn't the end of the world. But as you get busier and busier with this, you have to be more and more and more selective as to who you make the offer to. And obviously those are going to be the ones that are most motivated and their timing is closest to now. That was a really good question, actually, Andrea, to finish off our session here today with. So I want to thank everybody again for joining us, and we'll do it again next week as we do every week. So Andrea, thanks for your help, and look forward to seeing everybody this weekend and next week in Huntington Beach. Thanks so much, Andrea.
Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful afternoon.